for an opportunity 5 years, every 5 years. Because in 2027, Kenyans and parents of this country and children also, because by the time he took power, their children who were in grade 8, now they are voters. Now those children are voters. And I want to plead with Kenyans that, please, there are sectors that have suffered in our sight. There are sectors that have suffered in our sight. There are children who have fallen out of school when William Ruto ruled as president. Those children should sue. Their right to education is justiciable. But they don't have the wherewithal. You know, they cannot do anything. They will live with those consequences for the rest of their lives. And that is why we are saying we do not want things to get there. Because even 1.3 years that is remaining, so much can happen. We do not want to lose any more child. We do not want any other parent to be disheartened. We do not want households to feel the burden that they are feeling. You know, parents have received another fee structure still from Lenana School.
Okay.
Lenana School. To just corroborate what we were saying about Alliance Girls. And Lenana is charging a whooping 110,000 Kenya shillings to the parents against a government policy that is saying C1 schools such as Lenana will be charging 53,000.
53, yeah.
So we want to book a date. We want to book a date with the Minister for Education because we want him to explain to us with the aid of very well labeled diagrams how does a school charge 110 and you are telling parents that is 53,000.
53.
It's supposed to be. There's a conversation that must be had.
There is one that was had, a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago, that the ministry, again, who you want to go and visit, admitted that they do not know the cost of education. They don't know the unit cost of education from the time a child starts at the ECDC level to the time they're going to university. They don't know the unit cost of education. So if that's the case, how then is capitation set at that 22,400 shillings then applicable if you don't know how much it costs?
I will not even ask him how the 22,000 is applicable. It's very easy to say that we do not know the cost. But I just want to manage the ministers. Probably he's trying to probably he wants a PhD document. You know, no, it is not a PhD document. I want to refer him to the Kilemi Media report in a task force that I sat that tried to conceptualize and tried to understand some of these costings, and they came up with the 22,000, sort of saying, if government augmented what parents are paying by this amount, then the burden will be lighter on parents. And using 22,000, as it were that time, we can run free day secondary education. For people who do not know the cost of education, so where are they coming from to reduce it from 22 to 16,000? If indeed it is not known by anybody, where is your background? Where were you coming from to say no? It is not 22. It is actually 16. So we have refused, and we refuse to have conversations that have been concluded by other governments that we have seen existed. We refuse to start afresh. And I have said this: we are not engaging the president based on the Kenya Kwanza manifesto. No, it's a very inferior document. We are not engaging him based on the Kenya Kwanza manifesto. We are only confining ourselves to the constitution of this country, which he saw to protect. The moment he stops protecting the constitution, he loses ground for continuing to become our president.
You see, Janet, education and lack of it, children don't access education because of what you've said is levies. But you go through budget cycles, and education was allocated 702.7 billion. So let me just break it down further. So 387 billion would go to TAC, free primary and secondary education, 58.9 billion. And here we are talking about that money that is meant for capitation not being there. Yet on a single day, the president stood and said Nairobi would be allocated 80 billion shillings. There's seemingly money for everything else.
Apart from?
But education. Which then brings me to the next question, where with all these budget making process and appropriation of budgets to specific budgets, is it just a ticket item? Or is it just that the government of Kenya does not value education for the children of the Republic?
The government of Kenya, you know, there are certain admissions that I refuse to make. I refuse to make an admission to the effect that the government of Kenya does not value education. we will not even allow our neighbors to hear us saying that about ourselves. It is one person who has pretended because he has seen different priorities. He knows very well that even if the billions that you're talking about, I do not send them to education, there will not be a consequence. There will not be a consequence. What consequence, for example, does William Ruto have right now that children are at home? What is the consequence? Zero. Because why? The following thing that he will do, he will collect parents of Kasarani, put them in one hall, bring mattresses, water tanks. What else are these
T-shirts.
empowerment shenanigans? And every parent to walk home with 1,000 shillings. To him, that is more important. That is more strategic. To him, that lies to the people that I'm a president who listens to you. Vijana, vikundi ya vijana, mpate pikipiki. Can you stop giving youth a motorcycle? If you superintended over them when they were dropping out of school and you did not send the money that you were supposed to them, stop waiting for them at the junction with a motorbike. That is not empowerment. So what happens if you buy for every kijana motorbike? Watabeba nani? Right now, there's a crisis at every stage. At every stage, there are more motorbikes than the passengers are supposed to be they're supposed to be ferried. So the kind of economics that William Ruto is subjecting this country to is just unfortunate. And I have always wanted to tell the president, please, I know that you believe in education. Because I interacted with the president when he was the Minister for Higher Education.
Yes.
Yes. And when we were discussing Vision 2030, I give this example because I saw him. I sat in the hall. For the records, the NGO that time I was a CEO of was the one that had funded that meeting where we were discussing Vision 2030. And that time, Mogo Kibati was the CEO. And the president was the chief guest. And we were discussing Vision 2030. I have never forgotten his words, how he was saying the central role of education in transforming this country to a middle-income economy. Where has that gone to? So we're dealing with someone who knows what is supposed to be done. But out of bad will and bad faith, he is deciding. You said 80 million for what?
Nairobi. Wow.
80 billion for Nairobi.
80 billion for Nairobi is more important to him. And he does not want to pass that money through the systemic. There is the county assembly of Nairobi, that probably will tell him, no, we have better priority. Because the MCAs are the ones that really interface with people on the ground. They would say, we think that level 4, the maternity hospital in Ruai requires a bed, requires this, requires this.
Unit.
So he doesn't want to engage Kenyans through the systemic ways of doing things. So when Nairobi will be brought for 80 billion, probably the 30 billion is what will hit the road for Nairobi, and 50 billion will be unaccounted for. And this is not how we had imagined that our country would one day be run. This is not how we had actually imagined. You cannot come from 2000, when we are saying all children are in school, to 2026, when we are counting the children who are in school. We cannot. It is an unacceptable state of affairs, and Kenyans must rise. And if for nothing else, Kenyans must defend their right to education. And there is only one way to defend the right to education. We have known we cannot discuss education in isolation. We cannot sit here and discuss education in isolation because we have seen how bad presidents affect education.
Right, and
so we have to discuss it in the global perspective of reforming our country. We want leaders that believe in the constitution and in the right to education of our children.